Hello, welcome to our spot, everyone.
Come on in, everybody. Take a seat, grab some tea, grab some coffee, or a glass of wine, whatever is your choice, and get comfortable.
Yeah, how's everyone doing today? Driz here with Cassie. We're excited to bring yet another episode to you all. And as you guys know, the focus of our spot is community building. So, once again, come join us to learn how to cultivate better community.
Yes, and to introduce today's topic, we are talking about the effects of social media on community.
Yeah, we obviously there's a lot of topics that you can tie to community, and Cassie and I have been really speaking about the impacts of social media in our personal lives, so we thought this was a really good chance for us to bring it to you all and bring up the conversation. I think all of us know social media's impact on your own personal life, and as a collective it's transformed our generation's entire I mean, what, since we were teenagers. Cassie and I are millennials, but the younger generation, social media is literally part of their everyday lives. Even the younger ones, even if they don't have it, they're still engaging in some type of way. So we really want to explore and dive into what are the impacts of social media on community. you know is it good, is it bad, is it how can we use it to improve, and what are some of the consequences that we're dealing with it at the moment.
Yes, I am really excited about today's topic actually, just because we've touched on social media and some of its impacts and our ideas and our experiences with social media in the past and past episodes, but really we dive into just a couple different angles that you can think about this topic, and I'm just really excited.
And
So
it's very interesting because I think Cassie and I have very different views on social media. I'm a little bit more active on it, and Cassie is not, as she's mentioned in a couple of other episodes, right? So I think we're going to bring in each a unique perspective into this topic based of our own experience. But as you guys know, our spot is here to build community and help us build relationships. So let's talk about social media in that aspect, right? Cassie, how do you use social media?
okay, so just with my experience right now, I have Facebook. And because of our spot and a couple other projects that I'm using, I'm also on Instagram, but I very rarely get on there. I use Facebook more than anything. And, I don't know if I should wait to talk about like the pros versus cons, but my experience in general, I was very active on social media. I had an Instagram and a Facebook for years, since I was like 18. I think I was the first time that I was on Facebook, and then eventually, I don't know, maybe like early 20s, I got on Instagram, and I was always posting like selfies and always posting pictures of myself. And I a number of years ago, maybe like 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago now, um, I realized I was disconnected from myself. So I would post these pictures or post these posts, whatever it was, and it was really trying to get a reaction from other people on there. So I was trying to get likes
Mm,
or foster whatever type of validation that I needed at the time. And again, this kind of disconnect of self, like I was consistently reaching for that. So I, wasn't really being true to myself. It was always kind of like this facade that I was
mhm.
I was posting. And after, like I said, kind of a number of years, I went through this situation during a breakup, sorry, after a breakup, where my ex and his new girlfriend were constantly on social media, and they were posting all of these very nice couple pictures together. And this girl was like, she looked like a model, right? She looks like a model. And so it made me compare myself to her. It made me uh, just feel really terrible about myself, and not only that, but not just her, but also in general, right? Like I would see these posts that other people were posting, and I would compare myself, like, why is my life not as good as that, right? Like, this person seems to be like living a perfect, clean, neat, tidy, happy life, and like here I am, a sack of potatoes. Like, so why am I never measuring up? And so from there, instead of engaging in the way that we can often engage, after a breakup, and like start digging and looking into, the ex and the new girlfriend or whatever, like just really hardcore going into it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back from this. And I got off of social media for a number of years, actually. And I don't want to take up too much time here because we'll talk about my experience off of social media. But as of right now, I've kind of dipped my toe back in just with Facebook. And this is actually kind of like a new scary experience for me because I'm trying to push myself out of my comfort zone, at least for a year, and see how I feel. And so far, it's been me posting things to get a message across, whatever that is. Sometimes it's like funny things, but it's never in that same way that I was doing it before. And so far, so good. We're not talking about the cons right now.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the game of comparison and validation is like social media 101, right? I mean, I started back in like, I don't know what year, but I was like 14 with MySpace. So, definitely you start that game very early of using social media for like the validation. And if you guys remember top friend, your top five on MySpace, and then all of that good stuff, and as soon as like one of your friends did something, you immediately like took them off. And it was like this little game that we started playing with social media that we do in real life, but I think in social media it was just much easier to do, and really exacerbated a lot of these emotions that in normal life, it would happen at school when you were sitting on a lunch table and you were like, you're not sitting with me because I don't like you, right? Versus like on social media, that's the equivalent of like removing somebody from your top five. Obviously, I'm talking high school age, all of you guys who remember MySpace, but for me specifically, I'm actually pretty active on social media. I I have it all, I think. I have Facebook, I have Instagram. Got Instagram when I think it first dropped. Jumped on TikTok during the pandemic, and it was like a great escape from a lot of things. I think the only one that I don't actively use is like Snapchat. But yeah, I think I've dipped my toes in all of it and have my own experience with it all. Some good, some negative. Definitely went down the rabbit hole of like the Instagram grid a couple years ago, where I was using social media mostly for a business that I had with I used to teach Zumba. So had to be very public, had to post a lot of videos, and kind of did fall into that trap a little bit too, of like the validations and the likes, and then posting things, which led me also to kind of like compare, and also led me to fall into that trap of like the followers and doing things not in the most authentic way. And I eventually caught myself and was able to be like, well, this isn't how I want to use it. And it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel authentic. And then I kind of push back, not push back, I kind of got away from it a little bit. And I would say now my use has definitely been a little bit more authentic, but I'm still navigating my own use of social media. But same thing, I try to post intentionally and try to be more real with it. If you guys know, those of you who use TikTok, TikTok's a little bit more authentic. You can post more raw footage, things of what you're doing day to day lives. And I think that's why so many people resonate with it. And some people experience that with Instagram, it is a little bit more of like play the game of perfection and only show the good sides of your life. And I think for me, I do try to post like normal moments, not necessarily for validation, but just because like I just want to share that with the people that I I engage with. Right? It's like I'm a normal human being. There isn't anything um special about my life, and I don't need that validation. But I'm still human. So yeah, I still use it in a way. Sometimes I catch myself like, oh, I'm posting this for likes, or if I catch myself seeing like how many likes and how many views I have, that still does happen. So I just think it's really interesting because we bring social media has created this space for us to connect with people. Like I actually have so many people that I've connected with for that I've met throughout the years. And I think it's amazing. It's beautiful to just see like, oh my God, I have this story with this person that I met years ago and like look where they're at now. And I think that's like so beautiful because in the past, like you would meet somebody and then you lost contact with them and that's it. So I think in that way, it does create a sense of like community of a space where you can kind of like remember all these good times with these people. But I also think the cons sometimes are can outweigh the pros when it comes to social media, right? So we know addiction of social media is huge. Our generation is entirely addicted, and I think we also know that it's meant is designed to be that way. If there's this Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma that does talk about, there's a profit that goes into social media usage. So these companies of these networks are wanting you to be on it because the more engagement, then the more money it makes, right? And then obviously now you have influence culture. People are literally creating small businesses out of these accounts. So in some ways as well, it's like, well, how awesome people have small businesses now because of social media. It's created this opportunity, but it's also creating like an addiction for the public and all of us who are using it. So I think it's really important to kind of pay attention to how that is shaping our generation's um, habits and how it's impacting our health, right? So that's one of the things we wanted to talk about with it. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that right now, Cassie.
I mean, the only thing I will add is just that I do think there are a lot of pros, there are a lot of benefits that we get from social media. And, you know, being able to connect with people in a way that we never have before is so powerful. And also like spread knowledge. But with that also comes it's almost like dual sided, right? So like connecting with people versus like virtually versus in person, right? And also um spreading knowledge, is that verified or is that disinformation? Is that, where are you getting that information from? And so again, I'm not sitting here trying to um just call out all of the negative aspects of social media, because there are a lot of benefits.
Yeah, one of the cons that we wanted to bring up that ties into our spot and our purpose with this podcast is, social media, in addition to those benefits, it has its cons. And one of those cons is the loneliness that a lot of us feel. Social media has had a huge impact on that, right? Not only are we addicted to our devices, we've we've created a sense of convenience through social media where we're getting these like false dopamine hits um, of interaction, but it's not really fulfilling us. And a lot of us feel the loneliness. A lot of us feel the impacts of, we have all these followers and we have all these friends on Facebook, yet when we're at home needing to talk to somebody, we don't even have a real friend, So it's like these social media stats, data, friends, followers doesn't actually translate to real life, right? Like how many of us can say out of your 1,000 friends on Facebook or whatever followers you have on Instagram, how many of those people can you call when you're having a bad day? Right? And I think it does create this like sense of falsehood of friendship or community that doesn't exist. And the reality is most of us are lonely, and social media has had a huge impact on the loneliness epidemic that our generation is experiencing. And Cassie and I listened to this YouTube interview with the author of the book called The Lonely Century. Her name is Norina Hertz. We have not read the book yet, but we do hope um, to go into it a little bit more because the things that she talked about were really interesting. But she was studying loneliness, and one of the things that she in throughout her studies is she thought going into this research that she was going to find that the elderly were going to be the loneliness, and what she ended up actually finding was that the younger generation is just as lonely as the elderly, and that's highly concerning. That's highly concerning to have, a teenager or even a young adult say, I don't have one friend that I can go to when I'm sad or when I'm having a problem. Yet they're posting a happy picture and getting that the 15 like validation that makes them think that everything's okay, yet they're not okay. They're lonely and they're sad. So we wanted to kind of bring up this topic of how social media is perpetuating the loneliness epidemic that we're experiencing, and that it's having some true consequences on our health. Narina Hertz actually, through her study, says that loneliness has not just mental impacts, right? Not just like the mental health, depression, issues, but also physical health, right? It's all interconnected, and it's been equated that loneliness is as dangerous to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And when you hear that stats, everyone knows how bad cigarettes are for you, right? All of us, when I heard that, I was like, damn, that's huge, right? Because we understand not only the physical consequences of cigarettes, but also like the addictive properties of it. So when you think like, wait, social media is having that same or a similar physical impact on us, like, why is this not a public health crisis? Why is this not being studied? Why is this not being challenged? And obviously, as you guys know, we're going to touch on different angles.
So, yeah, I highly recommend watching the video that we have on our link tree where the professor at UCLA is interviewing Narina Hertz, who's an economist. She's brilliant. What's his name?
I don't
Oh,
remember,
okay,
but
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
he was great. Oh, Ted Robles.
Okay,
He's a PhD professor of psychology at UCLA.
yeah.
We'll link it to the episode notes.
So I highly recommend it. She really is brilliant. Her angle coming at it from an economic standpoint is brilliant. It really is, for so many different reasons. But I do just want to kind of touch on some of the things that Driz pointed out. So, I had this conversation with a friend about social media, and he doesn't have social media right now. And he was saying that um, his benefits from staying off of social media are that he feels more connected because his friends are like he's actually interacting with his friends in person more. And it's almost like you can tell the people that are reaching out, right? Versus just like liking a post or sharing a reel or something like that. The friends that are actually friends and family members that are actually reaching out and asking, how are you doing? Giving you a call, right? Interacting in a different way. And then again, meeting up in person. He also said that I thought it was really funny. His reasoning was for getting off of social media. He was like, my algorithm was just broken.
Right. And I think about when I take a social media detox, as we like to call it, right? Like with Cassie's friend and his story of his experience with getting off social media. Like when I get off social media, I feel like my brain gets a little bit of a break, and I'm able to interact differently with people. I I feel like I don't take what's the word? I take more advantage of when I have those in-person interactions, whether it's with the cashier at the grocery store or with somebody at the restaurant or my waiter or whatever. Like I feel like when I'm not on social media, I take a little bit more advantage of those people that I see and that I interact with because I'm not getting this dopamine hit from social media. So I kind of take advantage of the connections that I see in person, which is like so needed. Because it kind of humanizes the experience versus I feel like social media does create a sort of a illusion or facade of what real life is. And as we know, a lot of times people on social media can be brave to say things that they would never say to somebody's face, which is a problem, which is such a problem, right? It's been talked about and I sometimes try to remind myself, like, whenever I'm commenting on somebody's post, or critiquing something that I don't like trying to be respectful. And I always say, like, would I say this to this person's face in this way? And if the answer is no, it's like a little check balance of like, am I being respectful? Because at the other side of that screen is a human being. And I find that when I step back from social media, I'm reminded of that a little bit more. I'm able to have these human interactions, and I prioritize, saying hi, and yes, whatever the small talks. But we kind of do need that even at work, right? Most of us work remote now, and a lot of us do. We find that experience a little bit um different, where like you're in a Zoom or a team meeting for most of the day, and you don't have that interaction. And it's interesting because Hertz talks about that, right? Social media, or this digital world in general, um, it kind of removes that bonding experience of humans, which actually decreases productivity. And she brings up a very good point from, again, from that economic lens of, having companies prioritize a little bit of when you are in person, how can you connect your employees together? Because having that human in-person interaction actually increases productivity, again, because that human connection increases like a bond, because we are humans. We're not supposed to be isolated the way that we are now. And it actually increases productivity. It increases coworkers to work better together. And I think that's just because, with social media, you don't get the senses, you don't get the five senses interaction. You don't read the body cues. You don't get to experience like the facial expressions that you do in person. And that's huge. We're missing a lot of that. So yeah, it has its pros, but we are noticing that the cons are a little bit more. And ultimately, the question we're trying to pose here is like, how can we do both? How can we create community in person while still using social media as a resource? How can we continue to connect on a level that allows us to get like our human needs met, but also gain the convenience of social media and this digital world, right? And I don't know. I think a lot of us, going back to that first episode that we talked about third spaces, I think a lot of us are missing those in person interactions. But how do we also, like, we're not going to go away from social media. So how can we like prioritize both? Again, question that we're kind of posing out here to help us kind of like prioritize community, and using the tools that we already have in place, while acknowledging its effects, and not kind of like turning an eye blind to how it's actually hurting us.
Yeah, I think again, Hertz talks about regulation. Well, she talks about how it should be a public health priority, right? So governments should prioritize this. They should prioritize um, loneliness. So businesses should, and it should just be like on the agenda of many different industries, And then I think on the, I don't want to say on the smaller scale, but on the more general scale, whenever it comes to just us as a people, like having these conversations like Driz and I are having, what can we do? I think is a really good question, right? Like how do we do this? I mean, we can literally share about events in nearby areas, in-person events, right? We can try to, I think, instead of taking a FaceTime call or a messenger call with somebody that's in your area, you can actually go and visit with them, right? Take the time to go visit them in person. And I think it's that kind of um, you have to deprioritize convenience whenever it comes to that, and get out of your comfort zone a little bit. But every time I end up doing this for myself, because again, I'm an introvert, I'm very comfortable with being alone, probably to the detriment of myself, to be honest. Because whenever I'm like sad or lonely or like going through something, I can just sit in it alone, and be okay, instead of going out and being with people. But when I force myself to do that, when I force myself to go see a friend or do an activity with someone else or a group or whatever, I always feel better. Always feel better. And I think that that missing component, like Driz was talking about, the facial expressions and the different things that we get out of human interaction, it's that energy. Like you get energy from people, you get something that you just can't get from a fucking screen. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You just can't. um so I think, when she says like the contactless living is not desirable, I like loved that. Like it's the truth. Like who wants that? Who really wants that? Who wants to, just be an avatar? Like this is going to be some sci-fi society that we're living in soon, where we have, alternate bodies that go out for us and interact. Like I don't want that. I want to be able to interact with people and and move forward and build my community in that way and socialize in that way. So how can we reconnect as a society?
Right. And I think that's a good point where you talk about, being sad and wanting to stay alone. And I think everyone deals with their emotions in their own way, but it's like, can you be sad and also hang out with your friends? Right? Can you be sad and not pretend to have to put on a face and be cheery? And I really do think so, even social media, because it prioritizes being happy, right? We all share our good moments, that we also forget there's another side to us that is not always going to be happy and that is sad. But like nobody, like I think Hertz says, or in the interview somebody mentioned, like, nobody goes on Facebook and says like, today I cried because I was sad, and starts talking about their sad experiences. Like it's just not what we do. It's not how social media is designed. So it's like when you're in person, it's a little bit more normal because we're human. We're supposed to have that. When we talk about having those spaces to commune, I think a good point was brought up in the video, where sometimes it's expensive to do that. Every time you hang out with a friend, it's all about like, okay, even if I go to the coffee shop, I'm still going to spend money. I'm still going to do this, right? And how can we create a sustainable in-person communal space without it like breaking our banks? And I think that just um that's something that we should explore as a collective, right? I think Hertz brought up a good idea where, there are so many of us with so many good ideas for community building spaces. I mean, we've seen it. There's like WeWork. In DC, there's so many spaces of people now trying to meet in person. Like a great idea is like create a tax bracket for those businesses who are prioritizing bringing people together, because ultimately it's going to have a better effect on their health, right? Like I think about our spot. I would love for us to create like ad hoc meetings in different like cities, where in different little cities of where we're at, where we can just bring people together, and this same conversation that Cassie and I are having here sitting in her apartment in front of her computer, bring it to you guys and dialogue in person with all of you all. So
With some barbecue.
that'd be great. So, it's like, but no, we we understand that there's a hindrance when every time you go out to spend time with people, you got to spend money, right? And I think all of us know the current situation of the economy. Um, it's not the best. So how can we prioritize again as a collective under the system that we live in to prioritize these communal spaces where we can spend time in person and kind of get a little bit off social media because it's better for our health? And these are questions, and I would love to hear all of you guys who are building community out there. If you have a business right now that you are creating to kind of bring people together, I've seen so many ideas of like, you know, what like singles events, running clubs. We've talked a lot about them, but if you have an idea, like I would love to share it with us, because we would love to kind of work with you and prioritize again bringing people together more in person, because it's going to have a better effect for us in the future. But obviously social media is not going anywhere, the digital world is not going anywhere. So it's kind of like finding that happy balance and that middle ground where we're not literally self-harming ourselves by being lonely and only using social media to get our needs met.
Yeah, I really like how she phrased it as it's not just like a personal problem, but this is a political problem. and how she talked about how, again, she draws not parallels, but she correlates like loneliness to productivity and economic means, and like in general, like the economy, right? So businesses should be prioritizing this. They should foster an environment where their employees um, aren't as lonely, and they have more companionship, they have more in-person events, whatever it is. And then, for us, and you all, what can you all do? I think that's what Driz's point is. And I really liked, and I wanted to bring up the whole political group thing, where they talk about this study that was done in Germany, especially right now because of the hyperpolarization that are going on in so many different countries. But in our country, it's very in your face, and it's very in your face on social media. And so, in this, um, it wasn't a study, it was this database that was created in Germany. And I was actually trying to find it earlier. I couldn't find it, but I will find it eventually, and I will put it up. I will put the link up for you all. So, this study was done where, people entered, so German citizens entered their information into this database with their political views, left, right, whatever. So they were paired up with somebody. So paired up, two people were paired up with completely different opposing views. And then they met somewhere and they had conversations. And, I don't know if the outcome was really that they, started to really understand the other person's point of view, but they were more tolerant. You humanize other people in that way. And that's what we need. That's what we need today. We don't need more hyperpolarization. We don't need a screen to cyberbully or to, make someone feel inferior for believing in something. What we need is to be able to talk about these things. And just as there's like running groups and things like that, um, there are actually groups that you can look into, that they have events where if you have opposing political views, you can come and you can sit and you can talk about them, right? And I think that's, for me personally, like that, what I was just like this explosion in my head whenever I was like listening to this video. I was like, that's what we need. Like that's what this country needs. I would love to be a part of something like that. So you can look up online, Meetup, like in the Meetup group, and there's political discussions all the time, not only in person, but also online if you wanted to engage in that way. Also, you can look up Everybody's Maryland Politics, and there's something similar as well.
There's also, again, we're based right out of the DC area. There's this group called Meaningful Conversations. Is actually held at the Martin Luther King Library in DC, where these topics are kind of discussed, and it's in person. And I've been to a couple of their events. I think it's on Sunday. I'll try to link them as well, and they're great. And again, these we talk about different topics every week. There's like a different discussion. I think hyper depolarization was the topic of like a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to go to. But again, I think about these hard topics that we engage through on social media, but we interact with them much different when the person's in front of us. And again, that adding that human element versus like writing on behind my safe little computer, it's more human. You can actually empathize. You can see like, oh my god, this person's right in front of me. I can see their body language. The emotions are more raw, like the five senses are there. So it's just a more human experience. And I think it when it comes to having these hard conversations, that in-person interaction is much more beneficial. And I mean, I can guess that it would help with a lot of the issues that are going on in our countries right now, a lot of the division that we're feeling with a lot of these issues. Because I can disagree on topics online, but when it comes to sitting down with a person and actually hearing their story and hearing their life experience, again, like it's just a much different experience. And having the social media has really created a bigger gap in the two sides, and in people not really being able to see eye to eye to understand the other's experience. And we would love to kind of bring more of that back because it's needed. It's kind of creating us to be less tolerant of each other and just be a little bit, we would just want to bring back like that humanity, to kind of help us to not feel as crappy as we are, and as lonely as so many of us are. But yeah, we hope. I don't know if you have anything else to share with the video or anything else on your end, Cassie.
No, I do. I did kind of look into it. It's something called it's called contact hypothesis, and that's
Mm,
whenever there's a lot of disagreement over certain subject or multiple subjects.
mm,
But it's whenever you actually interact, you're bound to find more understanding. Um, and again, not so much like if Driz is left and I'm right, that she's going to start coming over to the right. It's just like, oh, okay, I understand why you feel that way now.
mm-hmm.
And there's not as much intolerance, right? And I don't want to go too much into the political. I just think that, at least for me, listening to these videos, having this as a topic of conversation, it's really kind of inspired me to think, okay, well, you can make money off of this if you wanted to. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We're not shaming anyone in terms of, wanting to do that. Why not? If you have a business or you have a space that you can rent or make money or whatever, like why not? Like let's do it, and let us know. Like Driz said, like let us know if you already have a business or you know of other spaces like this or events or businesses that really kind of foster these relationships and these interactions.
Yeah, I think these are the conversations we need to have. And I love that last point that Cassie brought up. I'm actually going to investigate it a little bit more as well, to kind of help us move forward. And we look forward to hearing from you all. Please follow us, like our podcast, follow us on Instagram at our spot, podcast our spot on Instagram. We're also on Facebook and on YouTube. Engage with us. Again, right now we're digitally, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, thank you for listening. We hope this resonates with you, and we'd love to hear your opinions in the near future.
All right, until next time.
Bye. Have a good time.